in theological education within the Presbyterian Church in Canada. We lift in prayer our 3 colleges: Knox College at the University of Toronto, Presbyterian College in Montreal at McGill University, and St. Andrew's Hall at the University of British Columbia. We are also lifting in prayer all of our theological students, and we are praying for all people that they may hear God's call as is appropriate to their life. For our guest speaker this morning, we have a first-year student from Knox Theological College, Charmila Ireland. Charmila was born and raised in the great city of Teeswater. I just wanted to say that for the people in Teeswater who are watching. Charmila is a graduate of Wilfrid Laurier University, is presently at Knox College in Toronto, and this year is also a student intern at Project Plowshares, a peacekeeping and peace education foundation in Waterloo. And so it is with enthusiasm and a warm welcome that we invite Charmila to the pulpit. And I say, welcome to you, Charmila, and God bless you as you speak with us this morning.
Hello, everyone. That was a pretty good introduction for me, a pretty good summary. So, have you ever had one of those mornings where you wake up and you just know exactly what you plan to accomplish that day, exactly what you want to do, and then you get up and you actually go and do it? And then at night, when you lay down to go to bed again, you think, that was a pretty good day. I did exactly what I planned to do. Have you ever met somebody who has a life like that? Somebody who knows what they want to do, and they go out there and they do it? It's, I think, a pretty good feeling, a pretty amazing life to have. Elizabeth O'Connor once wrote, "Every single one of us has a good work to do in life. The work not only accomplishes something needed in the world, but completes something in us. When it is finished, a new work emerges that will help us to make green a desert place, as well as to scale another mountain in ourselves." I think that it's fair to say that we are all searching for God's plan for us, for the mountain in ourselves that we can scale. We know that God has a plan for us. He told us in Jeremiah 29 and a number of other places in the Bible. We know from Proverbs 3, 5, and 6 that we should trust in the Lord with all our heart and not lean on our own understanding. In all our ways acknowledge Him, and He will make straight our paths. I hope that my story will show the mysterious, sometimes painful, and sometimes wonderful way that God leads us to His path. As Presbyterians, we believe that Christians are called, all Christians are called. Firstly, we are all called to be in a relationship with God through Christ. Our secondary calling is to use our gifts to serve God. God gives each and every one of us specific gifts, and He intends for us to use them. For most of us, this secondary calling is not to ministry, like I believe mine to be. Perhaps it's a calling to use your gift of compassion as a social worker, or your gift of organization and ambition as a business owner. These gifts can also be used in service to God. Perhaps that compassion is used in an outreach program for disadvantaged youth, or the organizational skills as part of a committee or the board of managers. There are a multitude of options within and outside of the church for us to use our God-given gifts and our calling to help glorify Him and spread the love of Jesus. For me, these gifts and my sense of calling led me to ministry. But that wasn't always where I thought I was going to be. When I was in high school, I thought about a lot of different careers, but my faith life was still very much in development, so I didn't really consider ministry at all. I decided that I was going to be a teacher. I don't remember praying about my decision. I was pretty certain this is where I was meant to go. So I went to Laurier and I got majors in history and French. I worked summer jobs that let me teach children. I was going to be a teacher. By last September, I was almost at my dream. I had started Teachers College in North Bay and made plans to live a very happy life in a classroom somewhere. I did my placements in a high school class, teaching grade 9 French. Talk about a tough crowd. Teaching is something that you need to have a true passion for if you're going to do it well. I had a lot of the skills I needed, but I couldn't seem to find that passion. After more than a month of struggling with my grade 9 class and receiving some very disheartening messages from a number of different people, I decided that maybe, just maybe, it was time to take my problems to God and not just the academic advisors. So I prayed, I thought about my future, and I realized that my plans and God's plans just didn't match up. And that was a pretty bitter pill for me to swallow. I had worked towards being a teacher for the last 7 years of my life, and now it was being snatched away. So I withdrew from Teachers College at the start of last December. As one Presbyterian document says, God calls you to a place where your deep gladness and the world's deep hunger meet. For me, that place was not teaching in a school. It was not an easy realization. I, who had planned out my whole future, was left adrift. I, who had leaned on my own understanding of who I was and what I was meant to be and do, had lost a huge part of my identity. Last December was definitely not a good month for me. What now? What now? What now? I couldn't stop asking. We've all experienced disappointment in our life. Things don't always go our way. It's life. I found it comforting to remember that God has a plan for me, even if it's not clear in the moment. Is anyone here familiar with the Garth Brooks' song, Unanswered Prayers? Even when it seems that God is saying no to our prayers, perhaps He's only saying, not yet, or I have something better planned for you. In retrospect, it's clear that dropping out was a wake-up call for me, to stop focusing on what I wanted and to start focusing on what God had planned for me. I looked into every career option I could think of. I prayed a lot, I evaluated my skills, I discussed my options with my family, I prayed some more. I contemplated Jeremiah 29:11-13. For I know the plans I have for you, declares the Lord, plans for welfare and not for evil, to give you a future and a hope. Then you will call upon me and come and pray to me, and I will hear you. You will seek me and find me when you seek me with all your heart. I reflected on His word, and I sought Him and His will with all my heart. I kept coming back to ministry. Was this God's plan for me? How would I know? I had been so certain that teaching was my future, and now my confidence was shaken. I didn't want to make a mistake again. How could I be certain? It would be so helpful to hear a big, booming voice coming from the sky telling you what to do. Sadly, I've never had that happen. I don't know about you. Fortunately, there is another Presbyterian document helpfully entitled, Am I Being Called? And there are plenty of copies available in the church office if you'd like to look at them. It says that a call has two parts, a sense of inner rightness and a sense of outer confirmation. Did I have those things? Well, short story. For all of summer 2012, I was lucky enough to work in France at Vimy Ridge National Historic Site. I didn't attend worship at all the entire 4 months because the only churches nearby were Catholic. And no offense to Catholics, but I don't know what's going on when it's in English, and I definitely can't figure it out when it's in French. So, at the end of August, I finally headed back to Canada, and I was in a whirlwind for the next week. I got home, I unpacked, I repacked my bags, I drove to North Bay the next day, I moved into a new house that day, and I started school the next. It was very busy. I finally returned to my hometown a week later, pretty much exhausted. On Sunday, it was time to go to church. I was excited to see many of my neighbors and my church community for the first time in 4 months. But I have to admit, I wasn't too focused on the worship part. The service started, and then something changed. It's really hard to describe, but it felt like the sun was shining on my soul. It lighting me up from the inside. It felt like something was filling a well that I hadn't even realized had run dry. It was comfort and joy and fullness. It felt like I was home. Fast forward 5 months to last December. I thought back to that feeling, to that inner rightness. And the more I prayed about joining the ministry, the more strongly right it felt. My calling was a sense of dissatisfaction and wrongness when I thought about any of the other careers that I was considering, and a sense of peace when I thought about serving God through ministry. Inner rightness is a very nebulous thing, but I was pretty sure that I had it. However, I was still worried that I was repeating my previous mistake, making a choice because it's what I wanted, and then fooling myself into thinking it was God's plan for me. The most pivotal moment came when I got caught up with one of my role models, who is an elder in my church. I ended up telling her about my feeling of calling, but that I was worried it was my plan and not God's. She replied that she had often seen the qualities of a great minister in me and said, "Is it not possible that God brought you here tonight to talk to me and be reassured about his calling?" Well, yes, I suppose it was. That moment was pivotal in my decision to pursue ministry. She had provided outer confirmation. This was further confirmed by the process of being certified for ministry, which involves an interview with my church's section of the elders. Although I can't say I enjoyed being grilled by them, it's nice to know that there is a group of faithful and thoughtful people who have considered my calling carefully and found it sufficient, and that they will support me. God has a plan for all of us, and he puts people in our path that can help us on our journey. We just need to open our eyes, our ears, and our heart to hear them. So I applied for the Master of Divinity program at Knox College in Toronto, and I put it in God's hands. My thought was basically that if this was the path for me, God would let my application through. If it wasn't, they'd say no. So, no booming voice from the sky came, but it was settled. I had inner rightness, outer confirmation, and an acceptance letter. Then, I was accepted as the Project Plowshares Peace and Human Securities intern for 8 months, also beginning in September. God's plan again? I think so. So I reevaluated my plans and decided to go part-time instead of full-time. For those of you who haven't heard of them, Project Plowshares is an organization that aims to break the cycle of war and bring peace. It's supported in part by the Canadian Council of Churches, of which the Presbyterian Church is a part, individual donations and grants. As some of you may have already guessed, our name comes from Isaiah, and they shall beat their swords into plowshares and spears into pruning hooks. Nation shall not lift up sword against nation, neither shall they learn war anymore. What a beautiful vision. We do research and we publish information on conflict, specifically things like arms control, nuclear disarmament, space security, and peace building. We advocate for policies in Canada and globally that will move us towards a just world without war. The people at Plowshares have clearly been called as well. They've been called to use their passion and their skills to help advance a vision of a world without war. I've been called to ministry, I believe. The Master of Divinity program is 3 years long, full-time, although you can attend part-time and do it up to 8 years, which a lot of students do. I will end up studying the Old and New Testament, pastoral care, worship, preaching, and a whole lot of other subjects. The program at Knox is small. There's under 100 people in the program in all of the years. The professors want you to call them by their first names, and the students are very friendly and inspiring. It's a great place to study and worship. Many, indeed most at Knox, are becoming ministers as a second career. I've heard again and again from my fellow students about their sense of God's plan for them. Some of their paths to Knox make mine look very straight. Many say that it hasn't been easy getting to that point, but all say that they're glad they're here. They're glad they took the time and prayer to discern God's calling for them. We all come from diverse backgrounds and situations, from Korea, from Guatemala, Canada, and elsewhere. Some have children, some have grandchildren, some are newly married, some divorced, some single. Some are very young, some not so much. Knox College is more than a building. It's a community where we all know and care about each other. A place where the differences that divide us are not greater than the love of God that brings us together. A place where learning is an act of worship and in itself, and where I'm constantly finding myself challenged to grow in new ways. For the first time in years, I don't have a set map for my future. Maybe I'll go full-time next year. Maybe I'll find another job and keep going part-time. Who knows? This time, I'm trusting God to lead me, and I'm excited for whatever adventures may come my way. So, what is your next mountain? What are your gifts? What is your calling? I encourage you to try to find out.